Hello and welcome. So today, guys, I am super excited because of course you know that it's all about the latest launch from Lattafa Sehr. I will be providing for you a detailed review in addition to comparing it to 3 other fragrances. And of course, at the end of the comparisons, I'll be letting you know which of those fragrances, if any, come the closest to Sehr. But before we jump right in, if this is your first time here, I'm Arahi, and I'm your fragrance concierge because I am totally committed to creating the best fragrance experience for you. I upload videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays, and sometimes you even get a bonus video for the week. If that sounds like the type of content that you're interested in and like a good plan, then please consider subscribing, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave a comment. Let's go. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get started. So this fragrance comes in a very beautiful and elegant black box. So this is the box, and as you can see, it has like a print of the bottle itself. And to me, it is kind of like a sticker, but I don't mind it. And then of course in the back it has all of the information on the fragrance as well as the authenticity sticker that all of these fragrances come with. Now this fragrance also has a date, but I was not able to take a picture to provide it for you because it's a black box and the print of the date is also in black, which is rather interesting. But I can tell you that this fragrance was just in production also in May of 2024. So obviously, guys, Lattafa has been very busy just putting out fragrances because we just reviewed Eclaire and the date was also May of 2024. Then of course you open the box and there is the fragrance. Look how beautiful, guys. And this is so heavy. Like between the box and the fragrance, oh my goodness, it's almost like lifting weights. Now, according to Lattafa, this fragrance was designed, in their words, to evoke an air of mysticism, and it is inspired by the fierce fire of the dragon igniting the flames within us. So I guess this is supposed to be a fragrance that really gets you going, right? Yeah, let's see about that. Now take a look at this bottle, and I hope that I'm able to capture it in enough detail for you because this is really a very different and very interesting kind of bottle. The bottle is really weighty. It does feel luxurious. You know, you would think with all of this here at the top that it would feel maybe a little bit cheap or cheesy, but no, guys, this really feels and looks quite luxurious. I mean, it is really heavy. And when you take off the cap itself, the cap is quite hefty and heavy. And here is the cap so you can see it in more detail. I just took off the cap to share with you the cap and I got a whiff of the fragrance and oh my goodness, I'm trying not to give anything away, but wow. Anyway, guys, so the bottle is very luxurious, as I said, and the bottle also reminds me of a Qissa bottle because you may recall when I did the luxury fragrances haul, I shared with you several Qissa fragrances and the bottles are pretty much like this. So the Qissa fragrances don't have a cap such as this one, right? But the bottle definitely reminds me of Qissa. But anyway, I am, again, not hating it. I'm really loving the entire, like, I don't know, dragon. So let's go ahead and jump right into the review. And let me start by sharing with you the notes of this fragrance. So as I said, I ordered the fragrance and I received it rather quickly. And of course, I immediately did an unboxing, which I shared in one of my shorts, and then I started testing it. Now this fragrance really does feel very luxurious. I have to tell you, from the moment I opened that box, I just felt that this was going to be a special fragrance. So let me just start by saying that this fragrance to me is a true vanilla bomb. And a vanilla bomb in a good way. I don't want you to take that the wrong way. What I'm trying to say is that the centric note, the note that takes over everything, is vanilla. Vanilla is the star of this fragrance without a doubt. In addition to the vanilla, there is a degree of spiciness. There is a degree of spiciness to this fragrance, and it comes from cinnamon. So you have to really enjoy a warm, spicy opening. And of course, you must like cinnamon to really be able to appreciate the opening of this fragrance. Because although the vanilla is present, guys, from beginning to end, in the opening, that cinnamon note is really, really dominant in addition to the vanilla. In addition to warm, spicy, is also sweet. It's not like super sweet, but it is definitely sweet. And it has like a balsamic quality to it all throughout the olfactory journey and the wear of the fragrance. It's also nutty and woody. It does have that woody quality to it. And it's also like a tad boozy. I know that they haven't disclaimed any boozy related notes, but I am telling you, to my nose, there's a tad of booziness in this fragrance, which goes very, very nicely. As far as florals, I can tell you that there is supposed to be jasmine or maybe even some white florals in this fragrance, but I can tell you that the jasmine did not play a significant role, at least not to my nose, in any part of the olfactory journey. This fragrance is all about vanilla and that cinnamon. Oh my goodness, it is really a mix of the vanilla and the cinnamon with that sweetness and that tad of booziness, because I am telling you, I pick it up so clearly. Like I'm having this conversation with you and I can clearly sniff the fragrance just from having opened the cap. And I am telling you that booziness to my nose is there. At the dry down, you are going to get the most beautiful vanilla fragrance that is a bit powdery, because in the beginning you do get the powderiness, and the powderiness intensifies up to a certain extent, but this is not a dry down that is very powdery, but it is definitely powdery. And at the dry down, you're going to get that vanilla. It's still going to be a sweet fragrance because of the vanilla, and then you get that powderiness, and it's all revolving around like a nutty quality to it that is also a tad boozy with a background of some spicy notes. Now, although this fragrance is a gourmand, I can't think of a dessert or any specific dish that it necessarily reminds me of. But what it does remind me of is the vanilla that you use when you're going to bake a cake or you're doing any type of dessert. You know, when it's a real thick and dense vanilla where the dessert has quite a bit of vanilla, that's what this reminds me of, because that sweetness with the vanilla and then that tad of booziness and then that spiciness of the cinnamon definitely reminds me of like maybe a custard where vanilla is very, very much dominant, and then you sprinkle the top with a bit of cinnamon. But don't quote me on it, but that's what I get from this fragrance. It is all about the vanilla, guys. So I have to tell you that I have really, really been enjoying this fragrance. I am really, really loving this fragrance, and I won't say more because I want to make sure that I don't give away everything that we're going to talk about next when we do the comparisons. But this is really, really an incredible fragrance, and I'm already loving it. I also want to remind you that this fragrance has not had a chance to macerate. So everything that I share with you today, you have to keep in mind that this fragrance has not had a chance to macerate at all. This fragrance, as I said before, is definitely a gourmand fragrance, but at that, it's not one that's going to make you smell necessarily too much like food, but you are going to know that it is a gourmand fragrance. And it is a gourmand fragrance centered around the note of vanilla exclusively. This is a fragrance, though, that I do believe that you can wear all throughout the year, but I also believe that it's best suited for the seasons of winter, spring, and fall. But this is a fragrance that I'll be pulling all throughout the year because it is that special. This fragrance has no oud, and I think it's best suited for 25 plus. This is a fragrance that, although it hasn't had a chance to macerate, it is giving me 7+ hours consistently without me having to overspray. It has a very strong projection during the first 2 hours. After that, it does become a scent bubble, and it takes me almost throughout the entire wear of the fragrance before it becomes a skin scent. This fragrance also has a very good sillage because it's already gotten me a couple of compliments. All in all, guys, and before we jump into the comparisons, I have to tell you that I am loving this fragrance. I really am loving this fragrance. And right now, without it having a chance to macerate, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. All right, so I told you at the beginning that we are going to be comparing Sehr to 3 other fragrances. And this first one that we're going to compare it to is one that from the start, I just didn't think that they would be similar at all. But a couple of fam members did mention it, that they were interested in knowing how it compares, so I figured I would bring it along. So let's go ahead and start with comparing it to Paris Corner Qissa Delicious. All right, guys, so as you just noticed in the comparison of the notes, there really is no way that these 2 fragrances are the same, not even similar. And I have to tell you that just because they both have vanilla and maybe share maybe one other note, these 2 are not even giving me a similar vibe. So I would say that no, Qissa Delicious is not a contender for being a dupe of Sehr. Next, we're going to compare Sehr to the latest launch from Lattafa, which was probably maybe like 2, if not 3 weeks before Sehr was launched, and I am speaking about Eclaire. All right, guys, from just that comparison, I'm sure you already realized that there is no comparing these 2. When it comes to Qissa Delicious and Eclaire, those 2 fragrances are lactonic in nature, and they really are lactonic fragrances. Different intensities, but they both are. Even though each fragrance may have similarities to some of the notes that you can find in Sehr, that does not mean that they have the same accords and tonalities, which is definitely the case. There is no comparison. To me, they are not similar. They're not even cousins. They're just 2 totally different fragrances. So let's just rule out right now Eclaire and Qissa Delicious. Now, this next fragrance that we're going to compare Sehr to is one where there are a bit more similarities, and let's talk about that for a minute. When it comes to these 2 fragrances, guys, they really do not smell the same. And it all focuses around the fact that when it comes to Teriaq, Teriaq is a no joke intense fragrance, and the level of smoothness with which Sehr has been done really just makes it completely different than anything that you'll find in Teriaq. In Teriaq, you do find that leather note, right, that we have discussed so much, and that we were concerned that upon completing maceration, then the leather note would intensify, kind of like what happens in La Belle. Well, you do not find that leather note in Sehr at all, because I'm not picking up on leather in Sehr. In addition to that, Teriaq has a more kind of like bitter quality to it. I'm not saying that Teriaq is a bitter fragrance, but there is an inherent bitter quality to Teriaq that you do not find in Sehr, because again, the cardinal difference between these 2 fragrances is that Sehr is a smooth vanilla fragrance with a very intense vanilla, but somehow they've done it smoothly, where in Teriaq, everything is designed to be like in your face intense, which is part of the reason that we love it. But nonetheless, these 2 fragrances are very different. In addition to that bitterness that I just discussed, I also find that the note of rhubarb really does play a role, and definitely is a game changer in Teriaq. And I've been saying that since I reviewed Teriaq on its own. Now, if you compare it to Sehr, let me tell you that rhubarb note definitely adds a level of tartness to Teriaq that you do not, again, find in Sehr. Curiously enough, even though we've been talking about the bitter quality and some of the tartness that you find in Teriaq that you don't find in Sehr, Teriaq is definitely a sweeter fragrance, much sweeter fragrance than Sehr is. And it is all thanks to that honey and caramel note that has been done beautifully here, but definitely those two notes make a marked difference between these two fragrances. The sweetness that you are going to pick up on when you're using Sehr is a sweetness that you will know is coming from the vanilla, because the sweetness comes with that very intense, like vanilla and bourbon vanilla, which is a more concentrated vanilla that you're going to pick up in Sehr. But when it comes to Teriaq, the sweetness, you are going to know that it's coming from the honey and the caramel. What I find is that the sweetness in Teriaq is really coming from the vanilla, and you can clearly pick up on the fact that it is vanilla and that the sweetness is coming from that vanilla scent. When it comes to Teriaq, you can also clearly distinguish that the sweetness is coming primarily from the caramel, followed by the honey, and of course the vanilla. So you really have a pretty intense sweet effect in Teriaq, contrary to Sehr, where it is a sweet fragrance but not very sweet, and it is a smooth sweetness. In addition to that, Teriaq has an animalic quality to it that is undeniable. I think we've actually discussed that on a couple of videos, because Teriaq definitely has an animalic quality to it, and it's not a tad, no, it's definitely present, which we love again because it does add character to the fragrance. But you're not going to find that animalic quality in Sehr. In addition to that, I find that there is much more vanilla in Sehr than there is in Teriaq. Teriaq is a beautiful blend of so many different notes, of course, with a backdrop in consistent vanilla presence, but there's so many other notes working in this fragrance that are definitely not even present here. This fragrance is all about the vanilla, guys, all about the vanilla, and the vanilla is the star and makes sure that no other note takes its place. All in all, guys, you already know how I feel about Teriaq, because I just had a video where I told you that now that it has had a chance to macerate, I am completely in love and obsessed with this fragrance. But I have to tell you that I am really, really loving Sehr, and I'm trying to be cautious in not really telling you how much I'm into this fragrance right now, because again, it hasn't had a chance to macerate. So what if it changes in a couple of months from now, and then I have to come back and tell you, well, it changed, so I'm still loving it, but I'm not liking this about it. So I'm just trying to be cautious. But I have to tell you, I am so happy with both of these fragrances. All right, guys, so for this portion of the video, when I said at the beginning that we were going to be comparing to 3 other fragrances, it's because I was talking really primarily about Eclaire, and I was talking about Teriaq, and I was also talking about the next fragrance, which we're going to compare Sehr to. I really wasn't talking about Qissa Delicious because, as I told you from the beginning, to me, that was like a no-brainer. I just knew that these two fragrances could not even have similarities just based on the note structure. And once I received this fragrance and I was able to sniff them both side by side, I just knew that, oh no, there is nothing here. But of course, I wanted to bring you that information. Now, the next fragrance that we are going to talk about may truly be the fragrance that Sehr was inspired by. Now, when I first received Sehr and I sprayed it on paper, immediately, guys, from just the air, right, I could tell, oh my goodness, I have sniffed this before. I was loving it. I was so impressed, but I just knew in the back of my mind, I was trying to find what fragrance was it reminding me of. And there's many fragrances that have the note of vanilla and that are centric vanilla notes. And I started to pull different fragrances in my collection, all the way from designer niche, Western niche, other Middle Eastern fragrances, and I just could not find the fragrance. So I sat down and I sprayed it on my skin. And when I sprayed it on my skin, I had an immediate reaction. Like, it was like brain memory. You know how you go to the gym and you have muscle memory when you haven't been to the gym in a while? It's like your muscles remember well. That's what happened to me, because when I sprayed it on skin and I smelled that opening, and then as it was going towards the dry down, I continued to sniff myself. And I just immediately remembered, oh my goodness, this is Montale Vanille Absolu. So for this portion, I have to tell you that I had to put down the Sehr bottle because it is so heavy. So I'm just going to have both fragrances here and we're just going to have a conversation because this is very interesting. So let me tell you my journey with Montale Vanille Absolu. So this is a fragrance that I had years ago. Vanille Absolu is not a fragrance that was launched recently, and I owned it several years ago, and I did enjoy it, but I ended up gifting it to a family member because I did not like the performance of the fragrance. The fragrance was lovely, but as I continued to add other vanilla fragrances to my collection, I just felt like I'm not pulling this fragrance at all, so why even have it? So I had a family member who had sniffed it on me and loved it. And of course, she doesn't care if it performs well or not. And I gave it to her. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Montale's Vanille Absolu, but let me tell you a couple of things about that fragrance. So that fragrance shared pretty much the same notes that we're finding in Sehr. But there is a difference, and the difference is coming from 3 notes that, to begin with, Montale did not even disclaim. And as we tried the fragrance, we started to pick up on the fact that, oh my goodness, is there cherry in this fragrance? Is there plum in this fragrance? Is there caramel in this fragrance? Bear with me, I'm going somewhere. So those 3 notes, plum, cherry, and caramel, were not disclaimed by Montale originally as being part of the note structure of Vanille Absolu. But later on, I started to look at other sites and noticed that if you went to, let's say, the UK Montale site, you would find those notes disclaimed as part of the note structure of Vanille Absolu. So the reason I am telling you that, because you may be saying, well, Arahi, okay, that's wonderful, but it just so happens that Sehr, based on what you just shared as notes, does not have cherry, it does not have plum, and it doesn't have caramel. Well, here's the thing. Here we go. So one thing I did not share with you, because if I would have shared with you, I would have had to tell you why I was saying that, is that in addition to that boozy quality, what I'm picking up in Sehr also is a tad of caramel. Am I picking up on fruitiness like a cherry or a plum or any other fruit? No, I am not. But I am picking up on like a slight note of caramel. I definitely am. So one of the notes that you find in Sehr and that have been disclaimed is the note of pomerose. So let's talk about pomerose. Now, pomerose is a chemical compound that has been patented by Givaudan. This compound is characterized for having an odor of like roses, not mature roses, but roses, in addition to, are you ready? Apples, plums, and dried fruits. So this pomerose note that has been disclaimed in Sehr could very well be providing the notes that we did have in Montale's Vanille Absolu and that were never really quite disclaimed. As I said before, I no longer own Montale's Vanille Absolu, but I can assure you I can remember the experience of that fragrance like if it were yesterday, because I really tried so hard to layer it, to overspray it in certain ways, to spray, allow it to dry and respray in the same area, just so that I could get the performance that I wanted from it. Because when it comes to Montale fragrances, those fragrances perform. They are very consistent. So I thought that maybe it was something that I was doing wrong, and I loved the scent of the fragrance. But I had to let it go because it was literally just sitting there collecting dust because I really wasn't using it because of its performance. So for me, when you compare these 2 fragrances, what I really believe at this point, and of course I would have to revalidate it after Sehr has had a chance to macerate, but what I am telling you right now is that in my opinion, Sehr is a twist on Montale's Vanille Absolu. So of the 4 fragrances that we compared Sehr to today, I can tell you that the only one that really, in my opinion, stands a chance of being a good contender or a fragrance that we could say that it was inspired by is definitely Montale's Vanille Absolu. Please, if you own Montale's Vanille Absolu, can you please let us know in the comments section if you were aware of the whole situation with the cherry, the plum, and the caramel notes. If you also picked up Sehr and you've already received it, can you compare it and let us know your thoughts. Is this a safe blind buy? I think this fragrance is definitely a safe blind buy if you are a true vanilla fragrances lover, because you are getting a ton of vanilla in this fragrance. I can't say it enough. Now, if you say, well, Arahi, how does this compare to Vanilla 28? No, these 2 fragrances are not the same to me, but now those 2, yeah, I would say that they have a similar vibe. But again, the vanilla has been done in a very different way. And there's a couple of notes in Vanilla 28 that are not found in Sehr that may also mark a difference. What I am expecting that's going to happen with maceration is that this fragrance is going to intensify. I also suspect that based on the fact that I am getting the level of performance that I'm getting right now, I suspect that this is going to be a powerhouse. I am so happy that I picked up. I have to be honest, I am loving the bottle. I am loving the cap. I am loving the entire concept. And I can't really say that I have anything like this in my collection. Do I have a ton of vanilla fragrances? Yes, I do. But do I have another fragrance that is exactly as this one? No, not really. So I'm really enjoying it. All right, guys, so we've reached the end of today's video, and I hope that I was able to give you all of the information you need to decide on if you're really interested in this fragrance or not. As always, thank you so much for hanging with me, and I will see you in the next video.